Welcome to Walking by Faith, a podcast from Torch Trust where we talk to blind and partially sighted people about how their lived experience of being visually impaired has impacted their faith and spiritual lives. I'm your host, Lynn Davis.
My name is Heinrich, here with my wife Irene, and yes, we do many things, and I've definitely found staying busy and active with others is very, very helpful. So we are part of a church community here in Robertsbridge, East Sussex, England, and we've been here for 2 years now. We moved over here because 5 years ago, ruptured cerebral aneurysm took my eyesight, and our grandchildren are over here, our daughter is over here, and we came to live near them, and it's been a wonderful blessing for us to have that support, as well as the church family here around us. What do? I spend my mornings partly doing some furniture assembly and other work with fellow church members.
Yeah, so we came here 2 years ago, as Heinrich said, and we're both nurses by profession in America. I've done a lot of nursing, but now I mostly work with 1-year-olds or the babies in our child care center in our community. And of course, enjoy the grandchildren in between. And yeah, we just help out wherever we can in the community and to the best of our ability.
Heinrich, when did you lose your sight and how did you lose it?
In June of 2019, after a day of work, I was getting a boat ready to take out on Hudson River the next day. We come from New York State, and the river was a few miles away. And boat was ready. My wife and I spent a wonderful evening with some friends and came home together. And when we got home, I noticed the moon was just rising. So I went out to the porch, and I remember just watching the valley and the moon and how grateful we were in that moment. And that's where my memory ended, as a aneurysm ruptured in my brain, causing me to fall off the porch and sustain a traumatic brain injury. So the next month was in the neuro ICU, where I was on a ventilator for 17 days. Slowly weaned off that after surgery was able to stabilize the aneurysm. And after a month in the ICU, I went to a rehabilitation hospital where I spent a month learning to walk and talk again, and also learning what happened to me and where the last 6 weeks had gone. So eventually, in the rehab hospital, I tried to read, and I discovered I couldn't. And I discovered the eyesight in my right eye was completely gone. And in my left eye, I only had a small slit of vision, enough to, in my waking state, not realize I'd lost my vision, and learned later it was a miracle that I could see at all, because both optic nerves are so badly damaged.
How did you become a Christian?
Yes, interesting question. I was born into a believing Christian family, and that had a huge impact. But then in my college years, I kind of was drifting a little and went to a party, graduation party, where two of the students got very drunk, and they took a canoe out into a lake. And after they were missing for a long time, with one of the instructors, I went to find them. So we ran around the lake, and we found these two guys sitting on the edge of the lake, arm around each other, just thanking God that they were alive. And we discovered their canoe had capsized. And in that moment, I realized how futile life can be without faith and without a family of faith around me. So I knew at that moment that my life needed to be completely committed to Christ and serving Him in my life. I'd say that's when I became a real Christian.
How has your faith then impacted losing your sight? Because I can imagine that must have been quite a world-changing event for you, especially in the very dramatic way that it happened.
Faith has surely sustained Irene and I through the sight loss. And prior to sight loss, I'd taken health for granted, doing a great deal of driving and running a pretty busy life. And then as we came to grips with sight loss, we became very dependent on prayer and our brothers and sisters in faith to help us through the hurdle of navigating the path forward. And it was difficult, but faith was our rock.
How has being visually impaired impacted your experience of church?
Well, my experience of church once in the sermon or presentation is more. I'm more in tune than ever with whatever is being brought to us, and also very actively involved in any discussion. But coming into the church building, usually with many, many others, and then leaving church with many, many others can be challenging. It's often families and people wanting to say hello. And with poor vision, it's hard for me to navigate crowds. So Irene or a friend is usually right at my elbow, my guide dog at my side, and helping me interpret who's around. So it's both challenging, but so worthwhile because church is really where we get our strength from to continue in faith.
Irene, how has it been for you supporting Heinrich in a church context?
I would say it's been challenging for both of us because brain injury and sight loss is a new concept for our church, and not many people understand it well. I think we're now learning after 5 years how to also choose a little more which gatherings we go to, or at least the Heinrich goes to, because just the noise and often many little children can be a lot of stimulation and difficult for him to deal with. And where we sit makes a big difference. And we definitely have people who look out for us in the church, but it's been challenging.
Heinrich, it sounds like you're having some wonderful support there in Irene. Is there anyone else who has also been supporting you in your faith journey, or has it been mainly you two supporting each other as a couple?
Our love and support for one another has grown as it's been challenged. And absolutely being part of the community of faith has been so important. And, from brothers and sisters willing to help me find the right place to sit in a service, or just accompany me on a day off, or look out for us, has been invaluable. And that's been over the past 5 years. I think sometimes for those around us, we learn to lean on people. And after 6 months or a year, they may wish we were doing much better than we are, or we might be doing better, and discover that we need continued support. So sometimes it feels like we are a challenge to those around us, but don't in any way feel, neglected or uncared for.
How has your unique lived experience impacted how you see and experience God and God's love?
Well, God's love is my strength and help for every day. Whenever I'm faced with a with the dramatic sight loss I experienced, it's challenging. That can happen when I bump into a door frame or trip on a stair or trip over a root. And that's when I have to remember that the Lord is near. And as we read in Philippians 4, not to be anxious, and that we'll be upheld by prayer and petition and thanksgiving. And in it all, to know that the Lord is near. And that is our strength in the moments of anxiety that do come. So it's really the difficult moments are the ones that turn me to faith most specifically.
What does walking by faith mean to you?
I think the best way I can describe walking by faith is in the story where Jesus came to his disciples walking on the water. And Peter asked if he could come, and Peter jumped out of the boat. And I can only imagine ran at Jesus and suddenly noticed the waves around him and the situation he was in. And he began to sink. And right then, Jesus was there and pulled him out by the hand and asked him where his faith was. And to me, walking by faith is walking dependent on Jesus to uphold, guide, and strengthen me and us as we go forward. We feel very dependent on his love and help.
And I would say prayer has definitely been a huge part of this journey, especially when Heinrich was first taken ill and we didn't know if he was going to survive or not. For me, prayer was my lifeline. Although, there are many times I felt very weak in my prayer, but knew that it was the only thing that I had to hold on to. And I think also the promises in the Bible, like from Isaiah, where it says about a smoldering wick, he will not blow out. Sometimes it feels like a very tough journey we're on because there's no day that's the same. There's no minute that's the same. It's often very unpredictable and changing. And it's hard to believe that there's something good in it all, but we know there is. And it's interviews like this that show us that there is meaning and purpose in what we're experiencing, and definitely given us a bigger understanding and compassion for others in, suffering or going through really difficult times.
We definitely have developed a real keen sense of anybody going through a difficult time, and we'll do anything we can to support those around us. And that is something. Our home is always open to anybody who'd like to stop by for a cup of tea or whatever it is. We've been married now for 35 years. And this last 5 years has surely been the most challenging, but also the most, it's made us the most keenly aware of how dependent we are on each other and help from above to give us strength to go forward.
And I might just add that I don't think I would have been prepared for dealing with this as well had I not experienced a couple things. Earlier in my life, when I was 10, my mom died from an aneurysm, incidentally. And then I suffered cancer 4 years into our marriage, and then also had a brain hemorrhage after our fifth child was born. And those experiences, I know, prepared me for going through this, because Heinrich is always at my side through those things. And now it's been a reversal in roles, and that has been challenging for me, to say the least. But yeah, we're not always in unison, but we strive for that all the time. So
We are so dependent on each other,
Yeah,
and
we
that I
are.
can't drive anymore.
Mhm.
And even sometimes thinking about what a day is going to bring, I just lean on Irene to help support me.
Do you have a wellness tip for listeners? So something that has made you feel good, that has helped you through your faith journey?
I think I have many wellness tips. When I think about, what is it that keeps me going? Because I am faced every day with my disability. But first of all, I stay active. So I do a lot of walking every day. I go to the gym almost every day, and just feel it's important to stay in reasonable shape. Then it's very important to me to stay active in my church so that we're available to anybody who needs support and help, and just to be there for others.
I could add to that walking and definitely reaching out to those in our church who have needs or don't have their families here on this particular community always means a lot to both of us, and we love to do that.
We spend a lot of time with our grandchildren, and that is wonderful. We do hospital chaplaincy every week. Spend an afternoon in the hospital visiting patients and families and staff. Some days we spend almost all the time with staff, and some days it's most of the time with the patients. But either way, we are so happy to be able to give back to the hospital setting where we spent so much time during my recovery. And then I do a lot of walking outdoors, as Irene mentioned, with my guide dog. Average probably 8 miles a day outside. And that is just so peaceful and so healing. And in spending time outdoors, I've picked up photography again. Prior to my injury and sight loss, I did quite a bit of photography. Then one day I brought a camera along and started shooting what I saw. And when I got to the computer, I could finally see my images. And I was amazed to see that there were some good ones. And so I've developed a line of greeting cards and prints, which I now make available as a mission, really, to demonstrate the greatness and love of God that I feel in nature and want to share with everyone. Because I think for each of us, we can become overwhelmed by the challenges of daily life or the challenges around the world. And we forget that God is at our side, and really God is in control of everything. And so my website is called shotwhileblind.co.uk. And listeners would be more than welcome to check it out and see what I do.
We hope you've enjoyed this edition of Walking by Faith. If you'd like to get in touch about anything you've heard on the podcast, or if you'd like to leave any comments or feedback, you may do so by phoning 01858 438 260 or by emailing info@torchtrust.org. We'll be back soon, but until then, from me, Lynn Davis, goodbye for now, and thanks for listening.